They called me the family failure for 15 years until they stepped onto my private jet. The invitation to the annual Whitaker family gathering lay untouched on the edge of my mahogany breakfast bar, the gold trim glinting under the soft London morning light filtering through the penthouse windows. 15 years of being overlooked, mocked, and underestimated, about to unravel with one headline. I turned to my phone, rereading the notification that lit the fuse. Financial Times. Camilla Rowe's Immersive AI studio surpasses $4,800,000,000 0 cents valuation. Published 2 days before the family reunion. So much for staying anonymous. Miss Rowe, my assistant's voice chimed through the intercom. Your cousin Miles is on line 1 again. Of course, he'd been calling since the article dropped. I took a deep breath and picked up. Hey, Miles. Camilla, what the hell is going on? He blurted. Bloomberg just called me, Bloomberg, asking how it feels to be related to a tech billionaire. Is this real? I looked out at the Thames from my penthouse in Canary Wharf. I guess you'll find out this weekend. No, come on, you can't just spring this on us. You let us all believe you were broke. Aunt Judith said you were couch hopping through Shoreditch. Concern, were they? I asked dryly. You mean all those years of jokes at dinner? The time Uncle Ben offered me a temp job in his law office? That kind of concern? They were just worried. No, they were dismissive, and you went along with it. Silence. Miles, the polished barrister, Cambridge law graduate, already managing partner by 29. Always the family's pride. How long, Camilla? He finally asked. I stepped onto the terrace, the hum of the city far below. Remember when I moved into that dingy flat above the bakery in Soho? Yeah, when you were doing those weird tech art projects. That was 15 years ago. You went quiet. That's when I launched my first interactive AI exhibit. It sold for £45,000 sterling, 0 pence. Back then? Seriously? Yup, and a few months later another £160,000 sterling, 0 pence. By the time Aunt Judith was loudly wondering if I'd ever get a real job, I had already hit my first million. I imagined Miles now, calculating, recalibrating, everything he thought he knew. But you asked Grandpa for help with groceries that one year. You drove that clunky old Volvo. I didn't ask for help, I said, laughing softly. I asked him to invest in my platform. He told me to be realistic. And the Volvo? A decision just like the penthouse, and the jet waiting at Farnborough. You have a private jet? His voice cracked. Gulfstream G 700, I said calmly. Another pause. Then, Camilla, how rich are you? I smiled, sipping my espresso. Rich enough that the next family reunion is being catered by the same team that does the Met Gala. He said nothing, but I could hear it. The sound of 15 years of judgment collapsing under the weight of one undeniable truth. I was never the failure. I was just busy building everything they said I couldn't. I could hear the disbelief cracking through Miles's perfectly polished tone. For years I'd been the ghost at the table, the sweet but struggling cousin no one took seriously. Tessa, the youngest and loudest of us, used to throw her credit card down at brunch like a performance. It's fine, she'd sigh dramatically. Camilla's still figuring things out. I let them. Forbes will print £5,900,000,000 sterling, 0 pence, I told him. But honestly, it's closer to 8. The sound Miles made wasn't quite a gasp, but it wasn't dignified either. I've got a board call in 5, I added breezily. See you on the island. Click. I turned to the intercom. Anna, is everything set? Yes, Miss Rowe, came my assistant's voice. Jet is prepped. Bentleys are dispatched to collect each family member. The island has been confirmed. NDAs are signed. Chef Marcel and his team are en route. Perfect. I glanced down at the invitation again, still on the counter. 15 years of being typecast, the eccentric one, the disappointment, the one they pitied when they thought I couldn't hear them. This time they'd meet the real Camilla. My phone buzzed. Tessa, Cammy, is this Forbes thing real? Like actually real? Please tell me this is a PR stunt. I smiled and locked the screen. Funny how the quiet ones always get the last word. Tessa, who once declared I was wasting my potential while she climbed the corporate ladder at a global consultancy. I remembered her toast last year. Some of us just prefer real careers. The intercom buzzed again. Ms. Rowe, both your parents are on hold. I didn't blink. Tell them I'm in a meeting. Then I glanced at my Cartier Ballon Bleu. And Anna, have them ready the chopper. I'm flying to the boardroom today. I grabbed my sunglasses, my iPad, and the sketch pad for our next product pitch, and as I slipped into my blazer, I found myself drifting back 15 years ago. The night I stopped trying to be understood. AI visuals aren't real art, Dad had scoffed. It's a fad. And this blockchain art thing, he sneered, total nonsense. You're being conned, Camilla. I was 23, fresh out of Oxford, sitting at the mahogany dining table in our family's Brighton townhouse, trying to explain my thesis. Trying to explain myself. They didn't fund my education for this. They wanted law school, a steady job, a respectable life. Actually, I began, I'd just sold my first collection. Enough, Dad interrupted, waving his hand. We've discussed this. You either apply to Chambers this spring or figure it out without us. No support. No second chances. Mom offered her soft, patronizing smile. Darling, we just want what's best. You need stability, a path. I scanned the table. Dad's disapproval, Mom's gentle dismay, Miles' judgment, Tessa's thinly veiled laughter. And right then, I knew. I didn't mention the £38,000 sterling, 0 pence, I'd earned from my beta NFT showcase, or that 2 investors from Berlin had flown out to meet me, or the fact that I'd already registered my first company. You're right, I said quietly. I'll do it my way. 2 weeks later, I left for a 1-bedroom rental above a record shop in Shoreditch. They assumed I was scraping by, and I let them. Year 1 was brutal, sleeping in shifts, writing code, refining algorithms, pitching cold. My first digital exhibit, Code and Color, sold out in 4 hours. Profits? £940,000 sterling, 0 pence. I didn't spend it, I built with it. Platforms, tech teams. A new framework for digital art ownership. And every time I visited home, same trench coat, same well-worn shoes, same quiet nod. Do you need anything? Mom would ask. Thanks, I'd say, but I'm doing just fine. And I was more than fine. By the end of that first year, my net worth had crossed £8 million, sterling, 0 pence. By year 3, I'd quietly surpassed £90 million sterling, 0 pence. But to my family, I was still just Camilla, the idealistic girl who'd wasted her Oxford degree. Now, 15 years later, as I stepped into my private helicopter on top of my Canary Wharf residence, I reflected on how a single white lie had become a multi-billion-pound secret. And in 2 days, that secret would make headlines. My phone buzzed again, a text from Dad. We need to talk. I smiled and powered the phone down. He could wait. After years of smug remarks and forced concern, they were finally about to meet the woman they never saw coming, and I would make sure they remembered. At precisely 11 o'clock IME GMT, the Financial Times article went live. I was already seated in my sleek home office, espresso in hand, panoramic windows framing the London skyline, a wall of screens lighting up with press alerts. Digital visionary, how Camilla Rowe quietly built an £8.3 billion sterling, 0 pence. Beneath the headline, a photo I approved myself, me at the launch of our AI-curated art platform, wearing a custom Stella McCartney suit worth more than Tessa's annual salary. The article didn't just expose my wealth, it outlined the ecosystem I'd built in silence. Immersive art studios, blockchain-secured auctions, global collaborations, and dozens of equity deals across Europe and Asia. My phone exploded. Tessa, are you joking? £8 sterling, 30 pence B. Miles. I knew something was up. Should have asked more questions. Mom, Camilla, darling, please call us when you're free. Dad, there's no way this is accurate. Aunt Meredith, wait, is this our Camilla? I muted the chat and opened my inbox. It was chaos. Speaking invites, VC inquiries, art investors scrambling for a stake, but one name stopped me: Charles Whitmore, my father's oldest business partner. Camilla, I've been following your success. I believe there's strong potential for synergy between Rowe Technologies and Whitmore and Lang. I understand your father may not have recognized the potential early on, but we're open to re-engagement. Warm regards, Charles. I actually laughed. 4 years ago, I pitched Charles a joint venture. He looked me in the eye and said, "You're not quite what we're looking for, Camilla. We're not in the business of fantasy tech." The intercom buzzed. "Ms. Rowe, your mother is downstairs. She's quite persistent." I tapped the security panel. There she was, Vivian Rowe in pearls and pressed linen, pacing the lobby with that same imperial air she used at charity galas. "Let her up," I said, folding my arms. Moments later, the elevator doors opened to reveal her, flustered, eyes scaling the penthouse as if trying to reconcile the marble floors, the Damien Hirst on the wall, the skyline view. "Camilla," her voice was barely a whisper, "what is all this?" I handed her a warm espresso. "This is my real home, Mum. Not the rental in Islington you all assumed I was scraping by in." She took a trembling step inside, eyes landing on the bespoke art and automated glass panels. "But how? When? How long have you—" 15 years, I said, leaning on the edge of the island. "Since the night you told me no one pays for computer art." She turned, confused and pale. "We thought you needed help. You asked your father for money." "No," I corrected gently. "I asked him to invest. He said it was a waste." "And the flat? The old Volvo?" "Part of the image," I said calmly. "The version of me you were comfortable with. The struggling dreamer. The disappointment." She lowered herself into one of the leather armchairs, visibly shaken. "You lied to us." "No," I replied. "I just let you believe what you already wanted to." And in that silence, I saw it clearly. For the first time in her life, my mother wasn't the one in control of the narrative. I was. "Does anyone else know?" my mother asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Just Miles," I said. "He found out when the article went live. I think he tried to warn you." She nodded slowly. "He called. Your father dismissed it. Said it had to be a mistake. Some other Camilla Rowe." I walked over to my desk and picked up a slim black folder. My logo was embossed in silver on the front. "This is the proposal I gave Dad 4 years ago," I said, handing it to her. "I asked for a £750,000 sterling, 0 pence investment. If he'd said yes, his stake would be worth over £90 million sterling, 0 pence today." Her hands trembled slightly as she held the folder. "He said you were looking for a bailout," she murmured, "that the project had already failed. And you believed him." She didn't answer. "Did either of you ever attend one of my exhibitions? Google my name, watch a single interview?" Silence. I turned back to the glass, watching the curve of the Thames shimmer beneath a slowly rising sun. "The family reunion's still happening," I said evenly. "But the location's changed. I've booked out the entire venue we usually use. It wasn't private enough. Everyone will be picked up in Bentleys, flown on my private jet, and we'll be celebrating on my Caribbean island." "Your island?" she echoed. "In St. Kitts. I bought it last year after closing my first £1 billion partnership." I finally turned to face her fully. "And Mum, this time, I won't be the quiet one sitting at the table while everyone brags about law firms and second homes in Provence. I have a few things to share too." She stood up shakily, adjusting her pearl bracelet and smoothing the front of her silk skirt. "Your father, when he sees all this, he won't be able to deny it. That his Faye's daughter built something bigger than anything in the Rowe legacy." I smiled. "And Mum, this is just the beginning." I walked her to the elevator. As we waited, I added, "Oh, and remember the Bentley you always wanted? The one Dad said was impractical?" She looked at me, puzzled. "I bought 3 of them last month," I said with a shrug. "Different colors, just because I could." The door slid closed on her stunned expression. As soon as they did, I pressed the intercom. "Anna, is everything in place for the reunion?" "Yes, Miss Rowe. Island staff have been briefed. Each guest will receive a personalized folder outlining every investment opportunity they declined over the years, along with current valuations. The documentary timeline of your achievements is finalized and queued for the welcome dinner. Perfect. I picked up my phone, opened the family group chat, and typed a single message. Looking forward to seeing everyone at the reunion. Dress appropriately for a private island. Transportation will be provided. Then I refreshed the stock dashboard on my laptop. My company's valuation had jumped again. Another £800 million, 0 pence added overnight. One more billion before breakfast. I pictured my father in his corner office, probably clutching the morning paper, trying to comprehend how the daughter he wrote off had become one of the most powerful women in Europe. I thought of Tessa, still flaunting her executive lifestyle, completely unaware that I could buy everything she owned just with this week's passive income. This reunion? It was going to be legendary. My phone buzzed again, a message from Dad. We need to talk before the reunion. Some things are better discussed privately. I stared at it for a long second. Then I typed back. We had 15 years to talk, Dad. You chose silence. Now, you can listen. And I hit send. Everything will be discussed at the reunion, Dad. Isn't that what reunions are for? Sharing our accomplishments? I ended the message, then pressed the intercom. And now one more thing. Yes, Ms. Rowe? Have the design team repaint the helipad. I want my name visible from the air. No one should mistake whose island they're landing on. It's already done, she said. And the video projections are ready for arrival. Excellent. Anything else? There was a pause. I thought of 15 years of being patronized, of playing the role of the eccentric disappointment. Yes, I said. Have the Financial Times article framed. I want it in every villa, every hallway, every suite on the island. I want it to be the first thing they see, wherever they turn. As I ended the call, I caught my reflection in the floor-to-ceiling glass. Poised, powerful, worth billions, and finally ready to rewrite the narrative. The countdown was over. The morning of the Rowe family reunion dawned crystal clear and golden. I stood at my private airstrip outside London, watching 3 black Bentleys pull in, headlights gleaming, each time to arrive just minutes apart. They were here. First out was my father, stoic as ever, but his stride had softened. My mother followed, elegant but subdued, the edge in her eyes dulled by our last conversation. Then came Miles, Tessa, and the extended entourage, cousins, uncles, old family friends, each of them blinking against the rising sun, confused by the jet gleaming at the center of the runway. And there it stood, waiting. My Gulfstream G800, spotless and blinding white, Rowe Interactive, etched in platinum along its side. Welcome, everyone, I called out, my voice calm but commanding. I trust the ride was smooth. Camilla, my father said, stepping forward with what he hoped passed for composed authority. This is excessive. The estate in Sussex would have sufficed. I smiled, tilting my sunglasses down. Too public, Dad. This reunion needed more context. That's why we'll be hosting it on my island. Your what? Tessa blurted, clutching her Dior bag like it was a life vest. Of course you have an island. As they stepped inside the jet, I watched it happen. First disbelief, then awe, crystal lighting, rare sculptures, bottles of vintage Krug waiting on gold trays. Is that a real Hockney? Aunt Meredith asked, squinting. It is, I said casually. Snagged it last year at Sotheby's. Dad cleared his throat. Camilla, perhaps we should talk. We will, once we land, I replied, raising my glass. In the meantime, enjoy the champagne. It costs more than your entire quarterly revenue, Miles. He blinked. Perfect. 2 hours later, we descended toward Paradise, my 300-acre private island off the coast of Antigua, lush with palms and polished architecture, the main compound resting like a crown atop the hillside. And there it was, just as planned. Camilla Rowe, spelled in bold white across the helipad, the letters so large they could be seen from 30,000 feet. Is that? Tessa stammered. Is that your name? As we touched down, LED panels surrounding the pad came alive, rotating through my greatest digital exhibitions, Fractal Eden, Code and Grace, Signal Bloom, each frame displaying final sale figures, £1 sterling, 90 pence M, £5 sterling, 60 pence M. Welcome to Rowe Island, I said as the door opened, my little corner of the world. Little, Miles muttered, looking up at the futuristic resort nestled among the cliffs. It was part sanctuary, part statement. Your villas are ready, I continued. Each room has reading material tailored just for you. For Dad, a detailed report on every investment pitch he'd rejected, annotated with current valuations and market dominance. For Tessa, a simple chart, her yearly income versus what I make in compound interest every 48 hours. And for Miles, a breakdown of the 3 largest contracts his firm lost to mine, plus the projected 5-year opportunity cost. This wasn't revenge. It was clarity. And they were about to get more of it than they ever asked for. I gave them an hour to settle in. Then I summoned them to the main dining hall, a glass-walled expanse perched above the Caribbean coast, with waves crashing below like a metronome counting down to the moment they'd never forget. The table was set for 20, a shimmering stretch of Italian crystal, platinum-edged bone china, and silver place settings worth more than most of their homes. And surrounding them, framed, backlit, and entirely unavoidable, was the Financial Times cover story. Digital Visionary. How Camilla Rowe quietly built an £8,300,000,000 sterling, 0 pence empire. They entered slowly, eyes wide, postures tight. The bravado had peeled off somewhere between the helipad and the Hockney-lined corridors. Even their designer clothes felt like overcompensation here. Please, I said with warm calm, gesturing to the table. Make yourselves comfortable. We have quite a bit to talk about. Camilla, my father began, his tone deliberately measured. I think I speak for all of us when I say, we're surprised. Surprised, I echoed with a smile. Not disappointed that I didn't tell you, not furious that I hid the truth, just surprised? We didn't know, my mother whispered. No, I said gently but clearly. You didn't want to know. Every time I tried to talk about my work, you changed the subject. Every time I offered you a chance to be involved, you dismissed me. Tessa's voice was faint. But the flat in Islington, the second-hand car, the times I picked up lunch because you thought I was broke, I finished. Her cheeks turned crimson. At least she had the grace to look embarrassed. Did you enjoy it? I asked. Being the one with the real job, the savior? She said nothing. Let me show you something, I said, walking to the head of the table. I tapped a subtle button beneath the edge of the polished wood. Overhead, sleek motorized panels hummed open. From the ceiling, high-res projection screens descended like theater curtains. The lights dimmed and a timeline appeared, pairing major milestones in my career with direct quotes from my family. 2010. This tech art stuff is a phase? Dad. Result? First exhibit sells out in 72 hours, nets £42,000 sterling, 0 pence. 2012. You need to think about something stable, Mom. Result, Rowe Interactive closes seed round at £4,500,000 sterling, 0 pence valuation. 2015. Camilla, not everyone's meant to be a CEO. Tessa. Result, Series B funding secured, partnership signed with IBM Europe. 2018. Crypto art is a gimmick. Miles. Result, platform crosses 800,000 users, £320 million sterling, 0 pence, in annual sales. 2021. We don't invest in virtual fads. Charles Whitmore, Dad's partner. Result, strategic exit, valued at £2,100,000,000 sterling, 0 pence. I turned back to the table. Every one of those comments, I remembered them, and I used them. They fueled every late night, every deal, every leap forward. My father's voice cracked. Why didn't you tell us sooner? Because you weren't listening, I said quietly. I needed to show you that success doesn't have to wear your uniform, and sometimes the girl you think is wasting her time is just ahead of it. I stepped toward the panoramic window, the sea a glistening mirror below. The hardest part wasn't the secrecy, it was watching you all celebrate each other while pretending not to notice what I was building. Miles scoffed under his breath. What, this is what success looks like to you? Yes, I replied calmly. You chose safety. That was your finish line. Mine was higher. I turned to Tessa. You wear your six-figure salary like a crown. I made that between meetings last week. Dad stood abruptly. Enough. We get it, you've made your point. I didn't flinch. I'm not looking for apologies. I'm giving you understanding. I pressed another button. The screens shifted again, this time displaying a sleek, futuristic prototype spinning in holographic space. My next project? Launching next month, a revolution in ownership and creation, forecasted to be valued at over £10 billion, 0 pence, within 18 months. They stared in. And that, I said, raising my glass, is the beginning of the next chapter. This time, you'll see it happen with your own eyes. No more doubting. The room stilled, swallowed by the kind of silence that only follows the collapse of long-held illusions. My family sat quietly, absorbing a reality they had spent 15 years avoiding. Finally, my mother found her voice. We're proud of you, Camilla, she said softly. We should have been proud all along. I nodded, offering a gentle smile. Thank you, Mum. But I didn't build this for pride. I built it because it was my vision, my truth. I let my gaze drift across the space they now couldn't deny. The digital installations looping across the walls, the panoramic sea views, the servers humming quietly below us, powering an empire. And now, it's my world. So, what happens now? Miles asked, his tone cautious but sincere. Now, I echoed, pouring myself a glass of vintage Bordeaux. Now we have dinner, as a family, but this time, it's on my terms. No facades, no roles to play. I raised my glass. To the truth. At last. One by one, they lifted theirs, the hesitation fading, replaced by something I hadn't felt from them in years. Genuine attention. What followed was an evening wrapped in warm lighting and even warmer food. Michelin-level courses, rare wine, and cautious conversation that began to thaw into something real. For the first time in over a decade, I wasn't the strange outlier. I was the one they were learning to see. When they eventually retreated to their ocean-facing suites, I stayed behind, barefoot on the terrace, watching the moonlight ripple across the Caribbean water. Anna approached quietly. Was it worth it? She asked. I thought back. Years of being dismissed, of walking out of rooms with my head high and heart heavy. Yes, I said, but not for the reasons I used to imagine. It wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about being free. Being me. I smiled to myself, and tomorrow, they'll see what's next. Because their world of cautious careers, calculated security, and quiet obedience was ending, and the one I'd built, of immersive creativity, global equity, and bold reinvention, was only just beginning. Later that night, I found something beneath my door. A folded note. My father's handwriting. I was wrong. Not just about your company, about everything. You didn't just succeed, you redefined the rules. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner, Dad. I read it twice before carefully placing it beside the framed receipt from my first digital sale. £38,000, 0 pence, for a sculpture no gallery would touch. A reminder of where it all began. The next morning the family gathered for breakfast. Postures relaxed, words kinder, eyes curious. The tension had given way to something else. Recognition, respect. And I realized something profound. Success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. And sometimes the most powerful victories aren't loud. They're quiet, like a skyline shaped by your hands. Like a future you built while everyone was looking the other way. My phone buzzed. Breaking. Rowe Interactive announces groundbreaking platform redefining art ownership. I looked out at the sea, the island, the legacy I had shaped in silence. The future had arrived, and this time, they were watching. No more hiding. No more performing. Just truth, on my terms. If you've heard my story, I want to hear yours. Leave a comment below. What would you do if the people closest to you doubted your dream? Would you walk away? Or quietly build something they couldn't ignore? Your voice matters, your dream matters. Share this video if you believe in second chances, in quiet resilience, in building when no one's watching. And don't forget to subscribe, because this story isn't just mine. It's for every soul who's been underestimated, who's been dismissed, who's been told to shrink. Keep going, let them doubt, then let your results speak for you. You don't owe the world an explanation, but someday you owe it to yourself to win out loud. Because success? It's not about being loudest. It's about being undeniable. Now, tell me in the comments, what dream are you unwilling to give up?